Trick or treat.
I will take a trick.
Okay. The trick is a joke each time. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We've only got 2 jokes today. What's a werewolf's go-to pickup line?
Ooh, I don't know. What?
How are you doing, good looking?
All right, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About. It's the episode's not coming out on Halloween, but it's being recorded on Halloween. So if you could only be here with Susanna Gray Jones and I to see us in our Halloween costumes, you might just have to look for those photos somewhere on social media. I'm Gina Tremarco, Master Sales Trainer at Sales Gravy, which is the sponsor of this show with my lovely co-host. I will let her introduce herself.
Oh, thank you. What an honor. I'm Susanna Gray Jones, recruitment strategist and owner of Chime Search.
And in the UK, what time is it right now?
We're closer together now, actually. We are 8:35.
Okay. All right. So we have a 4-hour difference. We're going to be doing a time change soon, but did you just do trick-or-treating with your kids? Because you're dressed up like a witch.
Well, we did, but I didn't dress up. I actually stole my kids' costume before they went to bed. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you for, I got my cat outfit on just for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I'm just going into trick-or-treating very soon. This neighborhood I live in is very big into it. Like there is a, put tables in your driveway directive that we're getting ready to do and set up so you can meet your neighbors, which I think is kind of fun.
It's similar to what we do. I think you guys started it. But one thing that I do know is that Halloween in the States is more of a girls can dress up sexy. In the UK, no dressing up sexy. It is you put that witch hat on, you get the chin out, you do the scary thing. I think that's right. Do you guys do sexy at Halloween?
We do sexy at Halloween, but there's a certain point, like at this age, I don't do it. But in my 20s, maybe.
You don't have to try.
So that's interesting that you can only be scary in the UK.
Yeah. Well, we take it seriously, It's not Sexaween, it's Halloween. So, yeah.
Ooh. Well, it's kind of funny because this used to be the show that made sales sexy again. And now it's this show that makes sales
sassy again.
So I think what we wanted to talk about today is the theme of scary things. Is that what the plan was?
Yeah. Oh, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
What about this? We talk about it a lot in sales. Have you been ghosted recently?
Ooh. You know what? I don't know if I've talked about this before because, so many people talk about being ghosted. We even teach courses at Sales Gravy on that. And I don't know if anyone has ever talked about being ghosted by your actual clients. How about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But also in recruitment, I'm thinking about a story that happened to me today, where a candidate whom I represented about 4 months ago for 2 roles. First role was unsuccessful. Second role, they wanted to see him again. He ghosted me. Found out today that he started at that role through another recruiter after ghosting me. So I thought, I know I've been ghosted and it's Halloween. What would you say for that? But it got me thinking because my mind suddenly was confused. It was like, do I go in this direction of being really angry and trying to get that fee? Because in theory, I could say I could get that fee. Or do I be accountable and say, well, I did something wrong here. I'm doing well. Let's learn from it. Guess which one I'm doing?
You're going to learn from it.
I have to, because that's the only way I feel better about it. And there's something about, we talk about being ghosted, but there's something about what you do when you're ghosted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the same way in any client situation. You get ghosted. You've got 2 options. Do you stalk that candidate until it's embarrassing, or that client? Or do you gracefully ask them for feedback? What do you do?
I've got an opinion on this because the reason why I brought up being ghosted by a client is because this recently happened to me. And it was a really good
Tell us
learning.
your story.
it's a really good learning experience. It's a client that I did training for. Was it last year? It was either last year or 2020. I ran into them at Outbound. We had a conversation. We struck up a conversation. He said, "Hey, we want to bring you back. Can we schedule some time?" So right there, while I was outbound, I scheduled a meeting with him for the following week when we got back from outbound. Had that meeting, great discovery, found out a lot of new things that were going on, found out what they were looking for, scheduled the next meeting on that call, right? The next step, put the proposal together, confirmed that we were going to meet, all the things, right? Following all the things in the process. And he no-shows. He's a no-show to the meeting. And, like the week prior, he had to reschedule because something happened. His kid got sick at school. And so I know that life happens and I have a relationship with him, right? So I've just assumed, I'm like, something must be wrong because it's not like him. This isn't his behavior. So, I didn't take it too badly. I just, reached out and said, "Hey, hope everything's okay." I called, I texted, I emailed, nothing. I think that was on a Friday. Monday comes, call, text, email, nothing. And I do this for several days, nothing. And I sat in this place for a couple of days of doing nothing where I'm like, I started, you start to tell yourself stories. I'm like, did they decide that they don't want to move forward? Did they have a meeting about budget? And now he doesn't want to spend his time on this, but he doesn't want to tell me. And you start telling yourself these stories, right? In your head of like making assumptions. And I decided to not listen to the noise in my head. I'm like, and it's kind of interesting because if we treated the prospects that we don't have relationships with, right? Those that ghost us, because a lot of times we will walk away from those. We're like, all right, how much more can I chase? And so this was my aha. I'm like, I'm just going to keep pursuing this for a couple reasons. I've invested time into this. I've put a proposal together and I am going to present this proposal. I put the work into it. I know he wants this information. Something must just be wrong. And because I have the relationship, I can text him. So I just kept texting him and he finally responded. And he's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm such a bad friend, aren't I?" Which I thought was really interesting that he said that. And I said, "No, you're just a bad missing in action person." And he said, "Fair enough." And then we joked around back and forth with text messages. And I got the next appointment scheduled. And it was just that things happen. And this is what we forget about as salespeople. Well, what our objective is not necessarily their sense of urgency in the moment. We are not the only thing on their list of things to do and consider. And in our minds, we're like, "But we had a meeting scheduled. Why aren't you there?" Shit happens. And so the hungry salesperson, the high achieving salesperson, they're just going to stay on it like a dog with a bone. Or what does Jeb say? A rat on a Cheeto, right? You're just going to, or is it a Dorito? I can't remember, but you're just going to stay on it.
Squirrel.
Well, the newest thing is squirrel, right? So that was an interesting moment because I felt so completely ghosted and I could have let it just get the best of me and I could have just walked away, but I just stayed at it to get the next meeting, which is tomorrow, by the way. So I don't have results for you at this moment. But I know that we're going to be doing business in the new year, but that's my story on that. I mean, what do you think of that?
I think there's two things from what you said there. I think there's the first thing that we internalize stories, right? So it's something that we do a lot as salespeople, and even the best top performers out there, even when they get rejected or they are calling and calling, "Oh, well, I'm not going to make another call because people are just going to think I'm hassling them." We make these assumptions, and why we do it to ourselves, I don't know, negativity bias. So I think there's that. And the fact that you chose to ignore the negative stories, you were aware of them, you chose to ignore them. Result, you will hopefully close this deal. But I think also it's the way you pursue them. Because I think where a lot of people go wrong is they pursue in the same way. So what was something that could have interested them and they just haven't got time to get into, or they might be worried about budget, is suddenly a pest. that same text that keeps coming through. You already said you text, you call, you email, all those things. It's coming back to blending. And I think we almost have to go back to the beginning.
But, it's so funny. It's back to the basics. I've had this conversation like several times today. I had this conversation with another prospect that I'm in the process of closing a deal with them for next year, for 2023. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what's coming back for them too is back to the basics. Like he's like, we know we have to go back to the basics, and back to the basics is boring and our team doesn't want that, but we know it goes back to the basics, right? It always comes back to that.
As Jeb says in his new book, it's very much, this is the time that the excellent top salespeople will shine, and the ones who just can't really be asked and don't want to upskill and have been lucky, they'll be swimming naked when the tide comes up, as he says. So,
and not everybody looks good naked.
And it's the same with recruitment, right? I've spoken to a lot of recruiters, as I'm still, you could call me a bit of a spring chicken. I haven't been through a recession in recruitment before in this way. And all the old school recruiters are saying exactly that. People are still going to be recruiting. Of course they are. It's just the strong recruiters are the ones who will stand out. So this is the time I think everyone should be investing in training as much as any, to be ready for the storm. And there is going to be a storm. We talk about it all the time. But it also brings me back to talking about ghosting. Why? Because I'm thinking now about all the times that I've been ghosted. And there's often a reason when you look back, right? Mm-hmm. So there was one person for Sales Gravy I was selling training to, and she was, yes, we're going with it. Even met up with her in New York. And then nothing, just nothing. And I'm thinking, same as you. Am I not as good face to face as on Zoom? Was I wearing bad hair? Did I have bad perfume on? All those things. It's like you say. And I came up on LinkedIn the other day that she's just started a new job. So there was clearly other stuff going on there. But my advice is that I've got a point. Everyone who gets ghosted has to ask themselves, though, how could I have avoided that? I think a lot of people put it back on the person. No, well, maybe they weren't interested. How could I have avoided that? What could I have done differently? Because ultimately, if you've got a strong enough relationship, they shouldn't.
I think it's beyond relationship too. Like if you have a strong relationship, right? Like I talked about this client, right? If a client ghosts, with prospects, we know this. Like if you're not showing value, if you're not bridging their problem to your solution, and they feel like something's missing, right? There's that emotional experience that they didn't get, and they can't quite connect the dots. Like they just know that somehow this is not a fit, right? That bias comes up. I think a lot of that does come back to value. And I think it comes back to what we talk about at Sales Gravy as well, is the 5 important questions, right? Do I like you? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important?
Do you get me in my problems?
Do you get me in my problems? Do I trust and believe you? Right? But when you're really good with making sure that they feel that, and then you can convey the value of how you can solve the thing that keeps them up at night.
Yeah.
And then you sprinkle in micro commitments of getting a pocket of yeses along the way. Like all of those things add up. All of those nuances add up. It's not just one thing. And then you add to that persistence, right? Then you stay on top of not giving up.
Yes.
That's my...
And what I want to add to that, and one thing that I've learned a lot recently is, you said sort of bridging solutions to their problems. It's before that even starts, because this is where I think I've been ghosted in the past. I'm an impatient salesperson. I want the money. Give me that deal. Show me that close. I don't discover sometimes in the depth that it's needed. And I know that about myself, and I know how to do it. But if you catch me in a mood where I just want to chase that squirrel, I forget to do the discovery. And it's not just the time for the discovery. It's, you said solve their problem. They might not know their problem, right?
Yeah. A lot of times they don't. Yeah. A lot of times they're not even aware of, like they've got a surface problem, but they're not aware of a deeper problem.
In the same way, recruitment, people, I'm not really looking, but I'm keen to know what's out there. And then like 3 days later, yeah, I really want to get out now. Because you coach them to the depths of what's actually wrong. And if sometimes we don't do that, then, oh, it was nice to chat with you, but I don't know why I did anyway. And you call them and they're like, yeah, leave me alone now.
I think all salespeople should train to be therapists.
Yes. Or coaches, right?
Yeah.
They don't all get trained to coach. There was a new course that came up in Salisbury University the other day about, was it teaching salespeople to coach through discovery? Something like that. And it just got me thinking, why are we not training salespeople to coach as part of discovery? Because I often find that I'm coming back to what I know about coaching with my questioning, with my delving into things like, for example, what else? So I sat with a candidate today and they were like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I was like, what else? What else?
Yeah.
And that's my favorite question, because they were giving me so much information that they didn't necessarily want to give at the beginning. And it's the same with sales. It's very basic.
Yeah. If salespeople did have some coaching skills, I think that would help their discovery process. I think maybe that's what's really kind of cool about being a sales trainer and coach at Sales Gravy, because we do all sell and train and coach. And so discovery is discovery, right? Every conversation to me is digging deeper to find out what's really going on. And even like right before going into training, I just did this with a client last week that I was getting ready to train. We had already been through an alignment call to discover what was needed. But 3 days before training, I said, let's just resync. Has anything changed? Because this was, a conversation that's been going on for 6 months, right? Like I closed the deal technically 6 months ago and was executing 6 months later. A lot can happen in 6 months. So, and sure enough, it did. Like they had doubled their sales team. Like since the very beginning, since our first conversation, they had doubled their sales team. And I'm like, okay, I'm so happy we're having this conversation, right? And what's going on. And then I was able to dig deeper before executing, right? So I think you have to stay on top of when you have the relationship too, of what's going on. And that maintains that relationship. And Jeb talks about that too in selling the price increase, right? When you have to deliver any kind of news that might appear negative, if you've been maintaining the relationship, it's not going to be that big of a deal to convey that news.
Yeah. Let us not forget that ghosting often comes from people just being too nice to say no to you. That can happen as well. They feel bad because you put time into it. So, and often it can be because the salesperson's too desperate.
Yeah.
And they can feel it and they know how much the salesperson wants this deal. So again, Jeb often talks about, you just be prepared to walk away.
Yeah. You got to be prepared to walk away and be careful of the investment that you've made of time. And there was another deal that I had been working on for a while and I put quite a bit of time into it. And again, vanish, ghost, gone. And we really had such a good rapport. It turned out we had some mutual connections that were, unique, like mutual connections outside of Sales Gravy, like not even people that followed Sales Gravy in a whole different coaching world. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know that person? Like it was just so strange that we both knew a couple of the same people and then completely ghost. And so I would call, text, email. And at one point I said, hey, listen, like I was trying new approaches because you don't want to keep sending the same message.
No.
And you don't, and I wanted to be as authentic as possible. And so I just kind of speak without a filter in a way. And some of my messages were like, hey, listen, if you're not able to move forward, just let me know. I'm going to keep persisting. Just, I think one of my messages like, we can still be friends. Like, I think that's what I'm like, we can still be friends. I'm cool. If you can't move forward, just let me know. Nothing. And then out of nowhere, his brand new assistant that he didn't have last time I talked to him reaches out to me and says, hey, he wants to move forward with this. And it wasn't what I originally proposed. It was something that I said kind of like, hey, this could be an option for you. Like,
nice.
Here's something as an option. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just kind of like threw it in as an a la carte option. And all of a sudden, this new person out of nowhere reaches out to me. I mean, I haven't had a conversation with him, but I closed the deal through her without talking to him.
Isn't that bizarre? It's bizarre.
It's a bit bizarre. And again, I haven't had that conversation with him. I mean, we've been on a couple like group calls together with his team. But again, you can't make assumptions. Now, yeah, I would like to get and have that conversation with him. But here's, I tell myself a positive story versus a negative story. He clearly is so busy that he got an assistant. And I also know enough about him and his company that it makes sense that he has an assistant because he's working with an outside consultant that I know. And that outside consultant pushes on things like delegation and get help to do these things and set priorities. And so I know how that consultant works that they're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And based on all of that, it makes sense that he finally is like too busy to manage things and got someone to carry things out for him. The bottom line is that I was ghosted for quite a while. I even considered it a stalled deal. I was about to mark it as lost.
Yeah.
And then boom. Now, I think my persistency had to play a part in it because I never gave up. I mean, I continued to touch.
So on that, you'll see I looked at my phone very briefly then because I remembered that I had a listener's question that I don't think we got to this one before. And one of the listeners actually asked, when should I give up with the prospect if they are ghosting on me? So bearing in mind what you've said, there are a lot of people who have a pipeline who want to know at what point should I give up? What would you say to them? I know what my answer is, but I'm going to hear what yours is first.
I have to go first.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot. I think it's very situational. I'm sure Jeb, I don't know if I'm just going to give you my opinion on what has worked for me. It's situational. I have to ask myself, first of all, are they an ideal client? Sometimes they ghost because it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
And so if I recognize it's not a good fit, I stop pursuing it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one option. In this case, like I just told you about that, I closed the deal through the assistant. I just start to lessen it. Right. Like I don't, until they say absolutely not, are we moving forward? Then I continue to pursue until I get a no. I'm not going to necessarily do a lot of heavy lifting. Like I did have someone who they weren't ghosting, but they were running me through the ringer on, can we have this version of a proposal? And it went 10 rounds of proposals. And I'm like, no. Then I cut bait. I'm like, I don't think we're a good fit for you. Because really what they were doing was measuring us up against 3 other vendors. And so then I was kind of a reverse ghost. I didn't ghost. I just said, I can't get you this next proposal that you're asking for. They wanted it the next day. And I'm like, I'm with clients all day. I can't meet this expectation. And I think with the 3 other vendors you're working with, you're going to find someone ideal there. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've got a matrix for this that we train at Sales Gravy. So, it is situational. It is about the ideal client. I think
it depends. Is it, are they high probability? Are they medium probability? Are they low probability?
Which you should know from your discovery. And I think
you should know from your discovery.
And I think, from a recruitment perspective, if a candidate ghosts me, then the thing I would say to myself is, you didn't set the agenda, the verbal contract. And I talk a lot about this. You didn't say from the beginning, agree how you wanted to be contacted. You didn't make it okay for them to come back to you at any point if anything changed, and it's absolutely okay. Sometimes just saying that to people. It's like, if anything happens, are there any changes? Please let me know, because my diary is really full at the moment with discovery calls, etc. And I really want to make sure that we're giving you the right amount of time for this. yes, it's a verbal contract. Yes, they don't have to do it. However, in my experience, the more that I've had that setting the agenda for contact moving forwards, if anything changes, the less I've been ghosted. There's always the odd ghost out there, but it's been less. It's been less. And I think we often forget to sort of have that conversation about what the contact should be like throughout the whole process and to get their verbal agreement.
Yeah. I'm big into that. I was part of a pretty big presentation recently that several of us were part of. And throughout the entire process, because we've had many meetings with them and then we did the proposal presentation. Again, it was so important and we all prepped for it together as a team. I was like the lead presenter, and even along that, in that presentation, it was about collecting yeses along the way and agreements along the way and checking in, right? Checking in. I think so many times salespeople like put everything on the table, but they don't actually stop and pause and go, so based on what I've presented, right? It depends on, like, if I'm presenting coaching, based on what I've presented so far, how does this program sound to you? Would you want to move forward with this program without even knowing what the price is, just based on what I've shared with you?
Yes. That collecting the yeses that you talk about is huge. It made a huge difference.
So, like, especially when I'm presenting coaching, it's so interesting, right? Because in their head, they want to talk price, right? They want to get to price. They want to get to price. They want to get to price. But before I get to price, it's like, do you want this? Is this something that you want? And then we'll talk about price. But is this something that you want? So that helps me prepare for the price objection. I don't know. I just went off on a little bit of a tangent, I feel like.
No, you didn't. It was great. And back to the listener's question, which you answered so well. I think, I would agree with the sequencing, but I would fade out, like you say. If it's an ideal client and they've got a lot of business and they've started to ghost me, and I know that I was one of maybe 2 or 3 vendors that they were looking at, then I would maybe do 3 days in between contacting them. And then maybe give them a deadline and say, if you could get back to me by this point. And then I'd wait 5 days, and then I'd maybe wait a week. So it wouldn't be clogging up my time and my pipeline as it is, but it would kind of be tailing off. But then I would maybe say I would get back to them in 4 months and touch base.
Yeah,
so it's not lost.
What I do, I go through my pipeline, and I'm getting much better at this. And I actually now put this on my end of week report of what's in my pipeline. That's also to help internally for our team so that they see what I'm working on or what might be coming down the pipeline for them from an operational standpoint. I've got, and I'm also probably, I don't know, I put everything in my pipeline. Everything. I put every possible opportunity in my pipeline. And I don't think a lot of salespeople would like to do that because when you have to market loss, it sucks. But it's the only way I can manage it.
They want to hide.
Huh?
They want to hide. They want to be invisible.
Yeah, I like to put everything in the pipeline just because it's the only way I can manage myself. So if I put every opportunity there, then when I go look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that one ghosted me. And so I will block out, this could be a pro tip. I block out time to go through my pipeline for people who have ghosted me or deals that have stalled. And then I just do a sprint and reach out to all those people in a time block.
Definitely a pro tip.
Either in a call block or an email block. And lo and behold, something always comes out of that. There was another one that I thought I completely lost because he ghosted me. Wow, like the more I think about this, like I'm thinking about all these deals that have ghosted me, but because I've stayed on them, they are actually still engaged with me. So they ghosted me, but I was able to pull them back in. And they're slow in response. But part of it, again, is like another one that had ghosted several. This has happened, and this is not abnormal with everything going on in the world and the economy right now. It's like, well, our CEO quit, and now I'm just sitting here and I can't get any answers. Right. And so that's a reality. And I think my response to that was, hey, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know that could be really difficult. And this is a turbulent time for you. if there's anything I can do to help you or coach you through anything, we do have coaching programs that might be beneficial for you. And what do you know? He's like, I would love to talk to you about that.
You turned it into an opportunity.
Right. So pay attention. To what's going on and turn off this is something I'm working really hard on right now, both personally and professionally, are the stories I tell myself that are not true.
Mm. We speak about this a lot, but it's so true. And I think there should almost be a course about mindset stories, and for everyone to write down the stories that they're telling themselves when they don't want to pick up the phone. Because I like to think you and I are pretty A1 ace performers. We have those times, and I'm sure
trying to think of how we would develop that course. That'd be a great micro course.
I think, a bit of group work. I think if everyone was honest about the stories, and then if everyone had a prompt. So for me at the moment, I've got loads of things in my life that I'm trying to be disciplined on, and the negative story comes into my mind. So for example, I'm trying to eat less carbs. So every time I eat, I think about eating carbs, and it doesn't matter anyway. And actually it's okay because I can just go for a run tomorrow and all those things. And you just have to find a prompt or a picture or a word or something to kind of take you away from that horrible kind of story that we will always tell ourselves. Same as a negativity bias. I know Keith always says, if you look at reviews on an Amazon listing, you go straight to -1. Even if there were 2,000 positive comments, you'll go to the 2 that are negative. And you'll be, what do I need to know? What do I need to know?
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because people do go to the negative, but it's funny you talk about the Amazon reviews. Maybe there's something weird with me. I go to the positive reviews so that I can convince myself that it's okay to buy the product. Maybe I'm not
all of us
normal.
Are spendaholics. But we had this conversation before. I always stuck with me when we were talking about what motivates you. And you said I was a bit negative because I always say, well, I worry that I'll be on the street with no food and no clothes and stuff. Well, clothes. I hope I'd have clothes. my point is that I think, that's a story that I tell myself that you could perceive as a negative story, but it has a positive outcome. So it's not always negative stories are bad. Some stories, like pessimists, they'd rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed, like they think optimists are. So there's 2 different types of people, but I guess it all turns out, what does that story lead you to? Does it lead you to something positive, or does it lead you to something negative? No one's going to pick up today because they're busy. And that's when my competitors are going to quit. So I'm going to pick up the phone, or no one's going to pick up the phone today because they're busy. So I'm not going to either.
I gotta tell you a story that goes along with that. So I was training military recruiters last week, and I just got back from that trip. And so they are, they spend a lot of time recruiting high school students, right? So part of their, I have them, we have them, Sales Gravy does, call blocks, like right there in the moment, you're going to do a call block. And the military commanders, they love that. They so love it. They get so excited. And it's so cool to do that training because we can show, at the end of their 2 days of training, literally hundreds of calls got made, right? Hundreds. And appointments got set. And we showed that you can do these things in these 15-minute time blocks. And so, of course, you're always going to have the naysayers. And their most common pushback is, well, these high schools, because I made them do their first call block at 10 in the morning. And they're like, they're not going to pick up. They're in school and they don't pick up. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's just do this first one to just practice and rip the Band-Aid off. You can do it. And we do it. And I'm like, all right, before we talk results, I'm like, how'd that feel? Let's talk about how, what that situation was like. And of course, you get some of the groaners. Yeah, nobody answered the phone. And I go, did anybody talk to a high school student? Raise your hand. And 3 hands went up. And I'm like, awesome. So I picked on one guy. I said, tell me what happened. And it's 10 o'clock. He's like, well, it was a high school senior. Her first class is not until noon. And then he went on and on, sharing all the details with me. I'm like, so you're telling me you can get a hold of a high school student during the day? I'm like, I'm going to debunk this. this is not impossible, right? I'm like, and I could point to the chart and go, okay, in that 15 minutes, it looks like you had 32 conversations, right? Like the group cumulatively, right? There were 32 contacts made. Somebody else share with me what happened in a contact in a conversation, right? And someone else is like, well, I talked to a grandma. Grandma answered the phone. I said, what did you learn from grandma? Well, grandma told me a little bit about that student. And then she said that she would be happy to put up posters at her church for me. I'm like, excellent. What can we learn from this, right? How do we gather more data? I was pushing hard on them about centers of influence and how important that is, right. They have to build as many stakeholders as possible as well. Like we talk about that in the commercial world, getting them to think about multiple stakeholders. It's not even their language. It's so getting those, like, that was the most exciting thing to me, to like debunk them that picking up the phone doesn't work.
Yeah.
Persistence.
We saw it during COVID. No one's going to pick up the phone because no one's there. Well, it's almost the best time for them to pick up their phones because they're at home.
And people were dying to talk to people. I was picking up the phone just to have conversation.
And we all had a common thing to talk about, right? And COVID in many ways brought people together, and the businesses that thrived, some thrived more than ever. Sales therapy being one. So there's a lot of scary things.
I was just going to say,
don't in the world of business.
Don't be scared. Don't get scared. It's not that scary.
And the ghosts will always be there, but we can try and eliminate the ghosts. We can be ghost catchers.
Oh, I like that. What if could we be ghost whisperers?
We can absolutely be ghost whisperers. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can I do a trick or treat? Are we coming to the end? Is it time for a trick or treat?
Let's do a trick or treat.
Do you want the trick?
I want the trick.
Awesome.
I like treats, but
it's a joke.
I'll take a trick.
It's one of my favorite Halloween jokes ever. You ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Why did the headless horseman decide to get a job being a recruiter? It's really interesting.
Why did the headless horseman decide to get a job? Because it's like, I always want to be able to, I can never get them. Okay, why?
I'll ask you again. Why did the headless horseman decide to get a job? Because he wanted to get ahead in life. A good one, eh? One of the better ones. I have been scrolling through jokes all day, and honestly, this one made me laugh much.
Oh my gosh, that was good.
Oh, I love Halloween. I do love Halloween.
Well, are the kids in bed now from Halloween?
They are. In fact, it was their first trick or treat tonight, and it was lovely. You know what I've really loved about it? The community, people who don't know each other coming together and sharing sweets and just saying hi, and the little excitement and buzz. It's like Christmas, isn't it? You can't write it. It's just that kind of feeling that you get.
I'm super excited because we're in a new neighborhood, and they really are into like the holidays. We decorated for Halloween because we didn't want to feel like losers. And then we started talking to another neighbor. We, just rolled over. We were driving. We stopped to talk to them about their landscaping, and because we're thinking about landscaping, what we're going to do. And they're like, yeah, we're taking everything down tonight and Christmas goes up tomorrow. I'm like, man, the pressure.
Yep.
The pressure. I'm like, David, we got to go Christmas decor shopping. Oh my God.
Oh, be lots of fun.
This was funny. This was fun, not funny, but fun about, things that scare you in sales and getting ghosted. Oh, not a ghost whisperer, a ghost buster, a sales ghost buster.
Ooh, you got it.
That's what you should be.
And anyone who can't see us right now, we're going to be posting a photograph of us totally dressed up. The women your mother warned you about, dressed up for Halloween. Even scarier than before.
Okay, Warners, thanks for listening to this episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About, brought to you by Sales Gravy. And if you want to up your game, you need some skills to be a Ghostbuster, go check out salesgravy.university. We've got courses on demand that will help you with that and so much more. So salesgravy.university. Also, you can find out more about our show at womenyourmotherwarnsyouabout.com. And you can also find Susanna and I at salesgravy.com. And of course, we are all over the social media channels. Find us there. And I'm going to bid you adieu and say goodnight, Susanna.
Good night. See you soon. Don't get ghosted.
Good night. Goodbye, Warner.